It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Ann Klaeysen. Ann has served as the leader of the New York Ethical Society since 2008. She's also a humanist chaplain at New York University and ethical humanist religious life advisor at Columbia University, and teaches at the Union Theological Seminary and Center for Education for the American Humanist Association. Ann holds a Doctor of Ministry degree in Pastoral Care and Counseling from Hebrew Union College. Please welcome Ann.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here. I'm going to just pour myself some water here. I have these chimes at home too. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, as I said, it's always a pleasure to be here. I see some old friends and someone new. You're going to love this society. Thank you so much for having the courage to walk through the door. I like to say that people who, this is a place where you can bring your whole self through the door. And that's what I found when I joined the Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture. And I keep that in mind every time I cross the threshold, whether it's the New York Society or Brooklyn or Philadelphia or any of those places, that I felt like, I grew up Catholic and my husband is Jewish, and so we found that ethical culture was a compromise, but as Glenn says, that's a good thing. And our son's first full sentence was, let's negotiate. So I think there is value in understanding that we come from different places, we land in different places, we make homes in different places, and how important it is to find a place where we can bring our whole selves through the door and to be welcomed by people who are there, and in turn to welcome people who come through. So, I'm on the board of the Encampment for Citizenship, and I am so proud to be on that board because I'm an encampment wannabe. I wish that I had been in the encampment, because from everything that I hear from all the alumni, and I mean alumni that go back to the 40s and 50s, yes, they're still around, to those who just went last summer, this is a transformative experience. So I'm going to give you a little background on the Encampment for Citizenship and why you too can be proud of it, because it's part of our history, part of our legacy, but also encouraging you to reach out to people who are teenagers, to your friends who may be parents or grandparents of teenagers, because knowing that I'm here today, we have extended the enrollment period for applicants for this summer, and it will meet in Oxnard, in California. And so you'll find out why it's a wonderful thing for you to be doing. So, let me give you some background. The encampment was founded in 1946. It followed the chaos and the horror of the Second World War. And the people who founded it were concerned by what they saw as the American education system's failure to bring young people together into experiences where they would learn about each other and would be participants in the democracy. Remember, 1946, we were still highly segregated, weren't we? And they said, if we are saying that we have made the world safe for democracy, then we damn well better practice it in our own country and raise our children to not just learn about the three branches of government and not just go in and vote on election day, but to really be involved in it. And so that's what they did. Algernon Black was the leader of the New York Society at that time, and he found a wonderful partner. Her name was Nanny Politzer, Alice Cohn Politzer, and she was a prominent civil leader, and she was quite elderly at that time. She lived to the ripe old age of 102, and she was active every moment of it. Some of you may remember Rose Walker. Longevity is part of ethical culture. I think that's a very good reason to become a member of the Ethical Culture Society, and it's something that we haven't promoted enough. Rose Walker lived to 104, and she was one of my mentors at both the Brooklyn and the New York societies. And so he found a real partner who kind of dug in to the work of starting this encampment. So what they did was they said, and as typical of Al Black, you've got a good idea and then you got to sell it. And so you go first, to your society. And so the New York Society for Ethical Culture was celebrating its 70th anniversary. And so they thought, we really need to, punch it up a little bit. So why not present them with this project that was going to cost them a whole lot of money, but also make a big difference in the world? And so the then president, Herbert Wolf, recalls that we took on the responsibility of raising a fund of about $200,000. That was back in 1946. And the proceeds went to build up the finances of the New York Society after the war, to revitalize the American Ethical Union, also a very worthy cause, and to make a contribution to the community in general by establishing the Encampment for Citizenship. So Al Black came up with this idea in 1945, and there was, of course, the organization of it, the faculty, the students, and at the time there wasn't too much but a glint in Al Black's eye, but he talked to many audiences about it, and he drew together because he was so inspiring, and he waxed elegant about this wonderful, wonderful idea. And here's what it was. It was the principles and the techniques of citizenship through lived experience. He believed that young people could be a positive force in their communities if they developed critical thinking skills, youth activism, leadership qualities, and the courage to break free from stereotypes. Sounds like something that we need today, right? Think about it. Critical thinking skills. Our young people today are bombarded with data. Not facts necessarily, but a lot of data, a lot of stuff out there. And they are targets of this. So they must have critical thinking skills to make their way through the dross of it all, to separate the wheat from the chaff, and to know what's true and what isn't. Youth activism. We were so thrilled at the New York Society in August to host March for Our Lives. Right? The young folks from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, who were still so traumatized that two of them recently committed suicide. And what they did with their trauma last summer, was to rent a bus, to find adults who were willing to supervise them, and they took off across the country. And their message was, vote. You're able to do it, exercise your vote. And enter into a conversation about violence. They modeled for so many adults how to have a nonviolent conversation with adversaries. And even though some of them became celebrities, they were able to bring, and they chose to bring other people into their fold. So by the time they came to us, the last stop they made on August 10th, the folks up on that stage were not the celebrities that you've heard of, but rather other young people from across the country, from Milwaukee, from Los Angeles, and from New York, talking about the trauma they experienced in their schools. I'll never forget an Italian reporter kept coming up to me. Where's Emma Gonzalez? Where's Emma Gonzalez? And I said, she'll speak to you if she wants to. But right now, she's pushing other people forward. Other voices that need to be heard. But my readers only want to hear from her. Well, then hear her real message. That every child is going through this, and every child needs to be heard. Youth activism. And in January, we hosted our Children's Trust. 21 plaintiffs, youth plaintiffs, from across the country who are suing the U.S. government because we are jeopardizing their future by not taking the stance we need to take about climate change. This is a tradition that harks back to the civil rights movement too, doesn't it? Right? The Freedom Riders. And I'm delighted to say that in May we're going to be hosting some of the surviving Freedom Riders on May 8th. These were young people who were making out their wills because they knew that they might be killed, and whom Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. begged not to do this. And they said, well, with all due respect, Dr. King, this is what we need to do right now. Right? The youth led. Youth activism. Leadership qualities. Right? Everyone can lead. Everyone can lead. And that's what they're doing. It's about a horizontal organization of leadership, not a vertical one. Occupy Wall Street taught us this. Some of the members in my society will say, well, where are those leaders? I want to follow those leaders. And I go, you can, because there are more of them. It's not that we've lost leaders, it's that we have more of them. And they're training each other to be leaders, shared leadership. Learning about leadership qualities, empowering, nurturing, sharing. Moral courage. It takes a lot of courage, whether it's walking through a door for the first time, or it's leading a march, or it's entering a space that's not really safe. But you need to be there to witness. To witness. We are called upon today to not only be allies, but to be accomplices for those who are taking leadership roles, and as we call it, centering the margins. Right? Making sure the voices that have not been heard are heard. This is what the Encampment did and continues to do from 1946. Eleanor Roosevelt was a longtime chair of the Encampment Board of Sponsors, and she often hosted students for discussions, workshops, and barbecues at her Hyde Park estate. The first 20 years of the Encampment were held on the Fieldston campus. And those of you familiar with ethical culture history know that the Ethical Culture School started in 1878, 2 years after the founding of the Ethical Culture Society, and it was called the Working Man's School. We're a long ways from there. Ethical Culture School was built first on Central Park West, and then the New York Society was founded right next door. Our building was dedicated in 1910. We share the same heating system. So when we want the heat cranked up, we better be nice to the school. I often meet with kindergarten classes at the Ethical Culture School because they're interested in our homeless shelter, which we've maintained for 35 years. And I tell them that we share the same heating system. That means we have the same beating heart. It's aspirational, not necessarily the case. But they're kindergartners. Now, Ethical Culture Fieldston is a $55,000 a year tuition prep school. And I invite you to Google what happened there recently, where the students of color decided it was time to lock out the administration. And they had a sit-in, and they stayed overnight a few nights. And they called in some of their alumni to help them, including Keith Wright, who is an alumnus of the Encampment for Citizenship. Eleanor Roosevelt defended the Encampment for Citizenship when it was attacked by the McCarthyite forces in the early 1950s. She defended it vigorously, and she said, "The reason I think these encampments are so important is that they are attended by citizens of different races and groups. They prepare people for thinking in terms of all people and not in terms of a select few. Not only we in the United States, but people all over the world need young people trained to be good citizens with an ability to think with an open mind." Amen. Right? And of course, the McCarthyite forces had a problem with that. We call them something different today, but they still have a problem with democracy. When we talk about presenting a bill so that we can actually have the day off to vote, socialist, they can't do that. We're supposed to be a democracy, and that's why the Encampment for Citizenship is so important. Over the years, the Encampment has adapted to changes in American society while holding fast to its core mission to create a life-changing summer experience in democratic citizenship. It seeks both to sensitize young people to the key issues of their time and embolden them to work for justice and the common good. At the end of my address, I will let the children, the young people, speak for themselves in a couple of short videos, and you'll hear they keep saying, "I found my voice, and I'm using it." More than 7,000 people are alumni of this program, and some of them you may have heard of. Eleanor Holmes Norton is one of them. Our Manhattan Borough President, Gail Brewer, I mentioned Keith Wright already. Miles Rappaport, David Rothenberg, who started the Fortune Society. If you know about the Innocence Project, or the DNA, there's Peter Neufeld. He and his brother Russell are alumni from the Encampment. Well, for a while, there was no Encampment. In the mid-90s, there was no more money, and sometimes it just is a truism that you can't run a program without money. But it wasn't. It was fallow, let's put it that way. The alumni treasured their experiences, and they remembered them, and they started to reach out to each other. I, too, became interested in the Encampment. As I say, I'm an Encampment wannabe. And I said, how could this wonderful thing have been? And it is no more, and no one knows about it. So I found an alumna, Ruth Taylor Carter, who lives in Rochester, and I grew up outside of Rochester, so we kind of connected. And I said, I've been thinking that you people need to have a reunion. And she said, I've been thinking the same thing. I said, guess what? I'm the leader of the New York Society for Ethical Culture, and I can give you a room. It does have perks. And so in 2009, in May, we hosted a reunion of the Encampment alumni. Not a whole lot of people. I mean, they've been reaching out to each other by email, on social media. They got together in the ceremonial hall, and they had 3 goals. The first, we need an alumni association. We need to be reaching out. We need to be connecting. Number 2, we need to find a safe place for our archives, because guess what? There was a fire in one alumni's garage, and some of the archives burned up. We need a safe place. Third, we need to resurrect the Encampment. We need to make it available for a new generation. Well, within 4 years, all 3 goals were accomplished. The first year, 2013, was the revival of the Encampment for 3 weeks. I'm sorry, only 2 weeks. We can only afford 2 weeks. and was held at the Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia, where we found a safe place for the archives. So if you go onto our website, which I'll show you, you can see the journals, the newsletters, the photographs from so many of those alumni. Not only in a safe place in the archives, but also more and more of them becoming available online. So, Archives, Alumni Association, Archives, Revival. In 2014, the University of Illinois in Chicago, and that was the first time that I went to the intergenerational weekend. Because the alumni, having accomplished this, were not going to be left out. They wanted to make sure they were there. And so began a new tradition of an intergenerational weekend where alumni would come, connect with the current campers, and commit to being their mentors year-round. Because one of the things that they realized when they got back home is they had no support. They had had this life-changing, transformative experience and went back home and had no support. They were trying to explain to their parents, to their families, to their schoolmates, to their communities what they had experienced, and it fell on deaf ears. Now, what they did was they took seriously their leadership roles and they founded organizations, they became activists. But it was kind of lonely. And so they decided as alumni they were not going to let these children be lonely. They were going to be available to them year-round. The next one was held at Tougaloo College in Jackson, Mississippi. I'll tell you, Jackson, Mississippi in July, it is hot. It is hot, it is humid, it's no fun. But to be with these people, and to be with the folks who came to visit them was transformative for me. And that's when I became a member of the board, because I said, I'm in. I'm all in with you. Let me tell you about one of the people who came to visit us. He lives there, actually. The Tougaloo College, by the way, is a fantastic education institution. And it was able to host so much of the civil rights activities because it was not run by the state. Mississippi was not allowing any of this civil rights stuff to go on in their campuses. But Tougaloo was private, and they made sure that everything happened there. So I met Mr. Hollis Watkins, a founder of the Mississippi Veterans of the Civil Rights Movement. And he taught us during that intergenerational weekend a song. Oh, freedom, freedom, freedom come, and it won't be long. He was an organizer of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and he was an organizer for Freedom Summer in 1964. He saw the inside of a jail, and he recalls one of the strategies was to open up the door of the cell and to open the back door of the jail and say, you can go. Got it, you can go. And he knew that what would happen is as soon as he walked out, they would stick the dogs on him and shoot him, and that would be the end of him. So he stayed inside his cell. He said, that's okay. That's okay. I can wait, I'm good. One of my many takeaways from Mr. Hollis, in addition to the song, was he said the difference between mobilizing and organizing. So I heard that you were at a mobilization, which is wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'm a child of the 60s. You give me a protest, you give me a march, I'm there. With bells and with a banner. There's a difference. You mobilize, and that's always good. And then you have to dig in and organize. And that was his message that weekend to the students and to us. Organize. And that's what these students did. Each one of them came in, this is in the new iteration, come in with some glimmer of an idea of something they'd like to do when they go home. And then they connect with each other. And then during that intergenerational weekend, They try those ideas out on the alumni, and they go, yeah, and you know what? I have a friend who lives in your community, and I'm going to connect you with that person. Oh yeah, I have a friend who's in this law firm, and I think I can get you an internship there. Right? Making sure that you get those connections right away. The next 2 summers we went to Hampshire College in Amherst, and some of the students, some of the young people were undocumented. So we had to take special care of them. One of the field trips was to go into Boston to go to an immigration court and to listen to what goes on in that immigration court and to have a meeting with a judge afterwards and to talk about their own experiences and to listen to the ethical struggles that the judge in that court had. Real deep conversation between undocumented youth who were campers and the judge in immigration court. Wow, what an experience. They also got to meet, the closest city was Springfield. So they also got to meet some young people on the council there and to learn how you may aspire to being the President of the United States, but you can also be a council member in a city, in your local community, and you can be an agent for change there. And you can do it. It's not easy, but you can do it. Last summer we went back to Mississippi. We went to Hines Community College. It was still hot. And the kids went to a new museum there. You probably heard about it. It's called the Lynching Museum. It has a more formal name, but basically that's what it is. And I heard stories during that intergenerational weekend from young African Americans who did not know their own history. They didn't know their own history. So for them to go to that museum and to the Civil Rights Museum in Jackson was an awakening and something you will never forget, and something that they're working on. Another advantage to this new iteration of the encampment is you don't have to just come for one summer. You can come back. You can come back for a second summer. And then you can come back maybe for a third summer as an intern. And then maybe you come back again as staff. And so we've extended the experience of the encampment. We've got the wisdom of those alumni who came in all those years ago and said, this is what I would have wanted, and I think maybe these young people would like it as well. I want to tell you just a couple of stories, and then I want to let you hear from the young people themselves. So one of the, there are many stories in the archives, and one of them was after the first or the second encampment, and students were sent from all over the country, including a lot of, and a lot of different organizations sponsored them, unions, and a lot of different places. So the story goes that there were, some of the young people decided that they weren't going to go right home, since they had learned how to be leaders, and they were going to go to D.C. So before they went back home, they were going to go down to D.C. and they were going to talk to their congressional representatives. So a bunch of them decided to go down, and they said, well, you don't have a lot of money. We're going to go to the Y. So they went to the local YMCA in Washington, D.C., and were told that they couldn't stay there because they were an integrated group. The white people could stay there, but the black people couldn't. So they said, you know what? We're not going to stay there then. And so what they did was they found other accommodations that allowed an integrated group, and they went to that one. So this had to be like, late 40s. In DC. Yeah, the late 40s. No, I'm talking about way back. Yeah, I heard you. This is the late 40s in Washington, D.C. But they did find a place in a black neighborhood in D.C. that allowed them, black and white, to stay together, as they had done at the Fieldston campus during those 6 weeks. So what they did was they went and they found their different representatives, and one of them, who was a farm kid from Iowa, happened to hear an ambassador from the UK, and I guess he was at some agricultural committee meeting or something, and so understandably the farmer went there, and he heard them saying these things. He goes up to the ambassador, and he said he never could have done this, but for the empowerment that you learned at the encampment. He said, "Excuse me, sir, but I've got to tell you, what you just heard in this committee meeting on agriculture, that's not what's really happening on farms." He said, "I invite you to come to my family's farm, and we'll put you up, and we'll tell you the real deal, the real story." And don't you know the ambassador went? He went to his family's farm, and he spent a few days with them. And he learned about agriculture in the United States from a real farming family. And this young man said, "I never could have done that, except that I learned from the encampment how to step up. Another people at a reunion told me this story, that they had been at the encampment, and they had met Dr. Martin Luther King, who had gone to a few of them, and they heard there was a rally at Columbus Circle in Manhattan, so they took the train, and they went there, and they went because Malcolm X was speaking. And so they listened to Malcolm X, and afterwards they went up to him, because they had learned they could do that, and they said, "You know, we're staying up at the Fieldston campus at this encampment, and we've heard from Dr. King. We sure would like to hear from you too." He said, "Sure, we'll go." And so they invited Malcolm X to go up to the Fieldston campus and to address the encampment for citizenship. So now you know why I'm an encampment wannabe, and why I love going to the intergenerational weekends, and why I'm looking to going forward to going to the next one that is in Oxnard in July. And one of the reasons that was chosen is because that's kind of an agricultural area in California, right? With farm workers there. And also because there are undocumented workers there, and also because there are indigenous people there. From its inception in 1946, the encampment reached out to indigenous nations, and have always included them among the encampers. And one of my friends, who's the president of the encampment, is Ada Deer. And she was head of the Indian Affairs Bureau in D.C. and tells a wonderful story. Her mother was from here in Philadelphia, Society Hill, one of those mainline folks, who went out west and fell in love with an indigenous man and lived out there, ran a school and lived out there. Ada never really knew about her mother's family, except that her mother was a twin, and she tells the story about how one day this Cadillac pulls up in front of the house, and they were staying, it was not a glorious place that they were staying in. And a woman gets out of the car and she says, "Oh my God, that's like my mother." No, her mother was okay, she was back inside. It was her mother's twin, dressed elegantly. And then an older man came out, and it was her grandfather. And they had come to see where his daughter was living. And so he kind of looked at her and looked at Ada, my friend, with disdain, and said, "So this is where you live, with your half-breeds." Kind of looked them over, got back into the car, and left again. And that was the first and the last that he had ever saw of her mother's family. Had a wonderful experience in the encampment, as now president of the board. One of the many friends I've gotten to meet by being a board member. So, what I'd like to do now is to have you listen to some voices. And they are from the young people, so this is going to work. Spacebar. No, I think I need your password. I see your lovely visage. Okay, thank you. Oh, yes. Thank you so much. There we go. Okay, good. Well, let me see if I can get this beautiful young lady close to you. There we go. Now this is, oops.
I could sum up the encampment in one word. In one word, it would be inspiring.
If I could sum up the encampment in one word, it would have to be liberating.
The encampment makes me feel empowered.
If I could sum up encampment in one word, it would be amusing and adventurous. That's the words.
The Encampment for Citizenship is a life-changing leadership program for young people aged 15 to 18.
The encampment empowers young people to tackle social justice challenges head-on and make a positive difference in their communities and the world.
Young people from varied backgrounds live and learn together for 3 weeks and leave having made lifelong connections.
Campers are encouraged to think critically and are exposed to real-life situations that open their eyes and change their outlook, not only of the world, but of themselves.
I feel like it gives people that don't really have a voice in the community a voice, and makes them want to change their community, change the way they think, and it's also a good experience too.
A change I noticed in me was that I'm more willing to help others, and I'm not afraid to use my voice, I'm not afraid to speak up, I'm not afraid to add a comment when it's necessary to stand up for somebody else that is kind of being belittled. I'm more open-minded to different cultures and different backgrounds. I'm more knowledgeable about the history, and that kind of makes me have a really strong desire to help others.
In myself, I have noticed that I have changed by being more receptive to people's different perspectives and being able to listen more rather than just respond quickly.
The encampment has taught me that my voice matters and that my feelings are valid. And as young as I am, I can still make a change in this world that I'm living in. A lot of time as young people, we always see ourselves so much negative. But when we're in the encampment, we're creating beautiful things within ourselves.
Encampment has changed me in the sense that I've gotten a different experience because being here, I've had to come over different struggles and that I haven't ever thought of.
I think the encampment is important today because a lot of people should know that they are not alone, and the encampment makes you feel that way. It supports you to get to your goals, to change your community.
And campers get to meet with local and nationally known community leaders and activists. And field trips provide opportunities to explore how larger issues are being addressed on a local level.
The encampment uses the arts to give young people the opportunity to interpret the world around them in creative ways and develop both individual and collective voices to speak out for justice.
Each year, the summer program concludes with an intergenerational sharing, where alums join with most recent campers to learn from their experiences and to share their own.
Join thousands of young people who have been transformed by this unique program and experience the encampment for yourself.
So thank you. And if you know anybody who wants to have this experience, please send them along. I heard the ages, 16 to 18 years old. And I just love these kids so much. I just had to tell you one last thing. Deanna, who you saw, comes from, she's an indigenous nation in the Midwest. There's a big problem on indigenous nations with suicide. 3 of her friends committed suicide. And so she came in with that trauma and that grief, and she left with an idea to start a suicide hotline in her community, which she did. So, how do we turn trauma and grief into something empowering, into something just transformative? Thank you.